Hey, this is John with Two Moose Home Inspections. Welcome to the November 2021 in-service training. If this is your first time watching one of our in-service training videos, I recommend watching it at 2x speed. That way we get through all this information. Let's dive right into it. First thing is safety. So safety, if it looks dangerous, don't do it. That means roofs, electrical, etc. There's a lot of safety things that we discuss, and some of them might be, hey, if you're going to a house, double check that it's the address. If it's the wrong address, you do not want to be entering somebody's house that you are not supposed to be at. The next thing is, maybe they forgot that today was the day of the inspection. Knock on the door, wait for a little bit. Once you do open the door, because you do have access with keys or access codes, then make yourself known. Say, hello, home inspector, hello, home inspector, as loud as you can. Make sure everybody knows that you're there. That way, nobody is startled, nobody's unexpected, not expecting you to be there. Because again, if you show up into somebody's house, especially in Colorado, you do not want to be a stranger in somebody's house. There is a huge risk of being injured. So I would definitely say, keep that in mind. Roofs. If somebody says, hey, we are paying for you to climb on the roof. Excellent. Do we have ropes and safety equipment? Yes. Is it always the appropriate thing to do? Not always. And going onto a roof, can we damage the roof by being on the roof? Yes. Is it possible the ladder could slip? Yes. Is there snow or ice on there? Yes. Is it slick and wet and dangerous? Yeah. Then don't do it. There's no reason to do it. No home inspection is worth the safety of one of my employees. And if there's a customer who's like, I can't believe that they didn't go up on that roof. Well, the thing is that I will always back my employees 100% about their safety more so than anything else. Additionally, electrical panels. You can look at an electrical panel and say, ooh, something's wrong there. You might be able to say, like the screws that were used, they look like self-tapping metal screws. You don't want that because it could strike one of those wires and electrify the entire panel. So yes, the panel is grounded, but as soon as you pull that panel off, it may no longer be grounded, and right as you get to that last section, you might just get a little bit of a zap, which is not ideal. So if something looks dangerous, then just don't do it. And all of our inspectors have had this conversation that if you have a customer who is there, or you have a homeowner who is at the house, and they make you uncomfortable and you don't feel safe, end the inspection. There is no inspection worth any kind of risk to an inspector's health, safety, well-being, whatever it may be. If there is an angry neighbor who is just upset that the house is being sold and this and that, and they just want to rant at you while they're holding, their garden shears or something, we can come back later whenever they're not as upset. And that's just always one of those things that I just want to make sure everybody's aware. Safety is paramount. Safety is number one. That's always our top thing. So first thing, safety. Let's talk about it. These Zinsco panels, they are super dangerous. They are very good at catching houses on fire, getting people electrocuted. And if you have one, just like Federal Pacific, you want to get rid of it. That is a definite. So owner's closet, unable to inspect. Why am I telling you that I can't inspect the owner's closet? Because we have had people say, well, why didn't you just, break into it? Why don't you just pick the lock? Why didn't you just take the hinges off the door and gain access? Well, because it's not our house. The house still belongs to the person that's selling the house. And until the day that you sign over the title to that house belongs to them. And what happens inside their house belongs to them. And if they didn't unlock the door, then sure, we can work out something to have that inspected or have them show you a video of the inside. But we are not going to break into other people's houses or parts of their houses. If it is not intended for us to be there, then we will note that we weren't able to gain access, and we will gladly work it out with you to find a way to come back and take care of something, whether it be with an extra trip charge or something else. If we're in the area and we can just swing by, great. But we are not going to do things that could negatively impact the property that we are inspecting. The next thing is water damage to the base of cabinets. When there is water damage to the base of cabinets, this is one of those things that is really hard to manage, because if there is that damage, you can't get it back to the condition that it was originally in without replacing those cabinets. But if the leak has stopped, does it really matter? Are there things that you can do to make it look good? And as long as there are still things that you can do to make it look good, then it doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. But we still want to bring it up to you, because you might say, ooh, this is so bad, I want to replace the cabinet. Or you might say, oh, I can just put a little thing, a organizer or something else along those lines to just cover that up, and then we're absolutely golden. All right, dryer vent termination on the interior. Now, we just made a blog post that is about dryer vents and dryer vent terminations. And basically, I think even in last month's in-service training, we said, if you took a big thing of clothes and they were soaking wet, would you just put it into a closet? And the answer is no, because it would create microbial growth like mold or other things like that. And the same thing, if you are venting one of these dryers into your house, that is not ideal. That is not at all what you want to have happening. So then we have masonry damage inside the fireplace. So whenever we have cracks inside of that fireplace, the problem with having cracks inside the fireplace is that the super hot gases can get through those cracks. And once they get through the cracks, then they can heat up the interior wall cavity, and then that wall cavity can catch on fire. If any of that happens, then you're going to have a bad time. And so we just want to make sure that we're letting you know that the inside of that firebox is damaged and should technically be replaced. Will you be okay? Maybe. Probably. Realistically, yes. But it's one of those things that if you're buying the house and you feel uncomfortable, then you should know that before you take ownership of the house. So then we come into the interior window trim, weathered wood. Whenever you're looking at these windows, a lot of times you do have damage right there. And why is that? Well, some of these houses have in-floor radiant heat. And the thing about in-floor radiant heat is that once the room gets to a certain temperature, it stays that temperature. And sometimes people visiting for Airbnbs or other things like that say, oh, well, it's a little bit cold. I'm going to heat it up and then I'll cool it down before bed. Well, that's not the way that in-floor radiant heat works. In-floor radiant heat is a constant temperature. So it always keeps your house the same temperature. So the problem with that is if you want the house to warm up, it's going to take about 6 hours to heat everything up. And then if you want the house to be cooled down, well, it's going to take 6 or more hours to cool everything back down. So what people do is they open up the window, they leave it open during a snowstorm, and then you get water on that windowsill. Now, some windows, we actually get condensation on the window. And whenever there's condensation on the window, then that condensation is going to drip down, land on the windowsill, and then you have what you have, which is, again, damage to those windowsills. So just something to be mindful of. If the smoke detector is yellow, it's time to replace it. It's as simple as that. If the smoke detector doesn't say how old it is, it's time to replace it. Both of those things, I think every 10 years you should be replacing your smoke detectors. We did a video about smoke detectors, and so make sure there are 2 different types of smoke detectors, and you want to get the photoelectric. Just think photos are cool. That means that having a photoelectric smoke detector is exactly what you want. And the reason you want that is just because they are much more able to accurately detect fire and save your family, and they will work as they're intended, unlike the other styles. So it's not that much more money, and I would definitely just say do the photoelectric. It's got laser beams and it's got light sensors. That's the way to do it. So next, the ground. So this flat ground area by the foundation, all the ground is sloping down towards that, and then it comes into that area. So all the rainwater and everything is going to be coming right down towards the house. There has to be adequate drainage in that area. Otherwise, we have risk to the foundation, or we have risk of water coming into the house. So there were no indications of any of those issues. However, it's one of those things that you as a homeowner, maybe you might want to think a little bit about how are you going to do your landscaping to get that water that's coming down off that hill to not come back up to the house, to kind of just go into this trough and then work its way out and away. That's what we're looking for, is some type of regrading. All right, so prior moisture stains visible. So again, wood never forgets. Once the mineral deposits have been pushed away, then that staining is going to stay on the wood forever. There's nothing more that can be done about it than that. So my other question is, why? If you take a look right over here, why is it that by this light right over here, why do we have staining up and around this light? Why do I have staining here? Did we have water coming in from the siding, getting trapped behind the siding, and then working over all of these pieces of wood, and then dripping through that light fixture? Because that's what it looks like to me. So I think that we have some other kind of issue going on that might only be an issue during spring runoff, might only be an issue whenever we have severe rainstorms. But any way that you look at it, it's an issue and it needs to be resolved. So dishwashers mounted improperly. Love this little video. Basically, the dishwasher has 2 screw holes that should be screwed up into the countertop, and then that prevents it from wiggling, shaking, moving, doing anything like that. And this one was not. And so it's an easy fix, but it's one of those things that you definitely want to make sure that it is done. All right. So this one here, the shower. So the step-in molding is not level. And so what does this mean? What it means is that if this is the shower where you're taking a shower, and then this right here, is basically what you step over top of. Instead of it, instead of it coming into the shower, so here's the shower pan where my thumb is, and so instead of this sloping in this direction to keep everything inside the shower pan, it's actually sloping this direction, which means that if any water lands right here, where's it going? It's going out onto the floor instead of coming down into the shower pan. So, not the best thing. However, they do have a shower door, so as long as you keep caulking on there, then it should be able to trap the water, but then you're going to have risk with mold and other type of microbial growth because that water is not going to properly drain back into the shower area. So then you have some laundry things. Noise excessive. Whenever laundry, dryer, washer, whatever has really loud noises, that means that we might have some bad bushings, we might have some bad springs, we might have a bad motor, bad bearings. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and normally it is less expensive to just replace the unit than it is to buy a new one. So that's why we let you know, because we don't want you spending your own money on something that somebody got all the wear and tear out of this particular thing. Let's say they had this washer and dryer for the last 15 years. Why do you have to buy a new one? They should have bought a new one 8 years ago, and they didn't. So why do you have to buy a new one because of them? So that's why we're just bringing that up. So fireplaces. The gas fireplace was inoperable. Now, there can be a thermostat somewhere that we weren't able to find. There could be a whole bunch of things like the gas being turned off at a different location, a bunch of different things, a pilot light that is out that doesn't automatically reset, that you actually need to take a live flame to be able to reignite it. Because maybe it has a bad electric start or it doesn't have an automatic electric start. But basically, if it doesn't work, all we recommend is, hey, have the person selling the house make a video and say, hey, John, here is the fireplace working. Here's how I got it to work. And I'm using your name so that way you know that I'm talking to you, because why would I make a video for John if, that's weird, because you're John, you're buying the house, and I'm making a video so that way you know that I know that it's working right now today. It's not an old video of the fireplace. So garage door. A lot of times we see this garage door damage where there's water damage. That's because people don't like to do their own snow removal. And so whenever we have snow that builds up against that door, then that is going to melt, because the inside of the garage is normally warmer than the outside. So it's going to melt that snow that's touching the garage, and then that's going to create water damage. And so the best way to prevent this type of water damage is just remove the snow from the garage door. That's all you need to do. It's as simple as that. Basic home maintenance. All right, sliding door not locking properly. I mean, 50% of them, right? 50% of all sliding doors just do not work the way that they're intended. And a lot of times, some manufacturers will have like a little foot thing that will prevent it from being able to be opened, a secondary lock. And those secondary locks are a lot more successful at keeping the door locked than these types of locks right here. If the door lock here doesn't work and it's not going to be an easy fix, then you can always add on a secondary door stop. And that might actually be the preferred method. So that way, you don't necessarily have to buy manufacturer specific parts to be able to put on a floor door lock. And what most people do, which you'll see at the majority of houses, is they will have a wooden dowel rod or metal pipe or something that they slide down, so that way the door hits up against it and does not have the ability to slide open. So then we have an unsecured cover plate. Now this, if you have kids, then I would say this is something that probably scares the crap out of you, because, as kids are learning how to walk, they are moving and they're at that right height and they're grabbing onto everything and they are pulling things and they're putting their mouth on things. And so if they are pulling down on this electrical socket or receptacle, and as they're pulling down, they put their hand in and they touch any of those electrical wires, those conductors, that's bad. That's very, very bad. So we want to make sure we're keeping things nice and safe. And so as a parent, safeguarding the house, it's great that you have the little plugs that are covering up the receptacle. But have you ever pulled on the receptacle? Have you ever double checked that it's actually securely inside the wall? The thing is, if you can, so as we do home inspections, we are normally putting ourselves in the mindset of the 90-year-old version of ourselves and the 5 or 6-year-old version of ourselves. And so one of the things is that you can do if you are going to make a house safe and secure for a child is just pull on everything. Pull on everything with like 20 pounds worth of force. And if you can pull on everything with 20 pounds worth of force and it stays where it's supposed to be, at least everything that is, like maybe chest height and higher, you don't have to worry about. But anything below that, if you pull on all that kind of stuff, is it good? Open up the drawers, pull down on the drawers. Is that going to fall over? The TV, is the TV going to fall down? Are there things inside the house that are dangerous? And this is definitely one of those things that is dangerous. So We're now looking at no guardrail present. So does a guardrail need to be present? Are the guardrail police going to come to your house and say, hey, you don't have a guardrail? No, nobody's going to come to your house. Nobody's going to say that you need to have a guardrail. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I went to this house party and they didn't have a guardrail. This is unbelievable. But just like I said, put yourself in the 90-year-old version of yourself or the 5 or 6-year-old version of yourself. If grandpa went careening off of this hillside, he's not going to be okay. But if your little 5 or 6-year-old went off that hillside, yeah, they'll be fine. You know, they're soft, they're pliable, they'll just bounce down the hill, they're fine. But grandpa, that's a broken elbow, that is a dislocated shoulder, that is a broken hip, and so we just want to make sure that you are aware of the risks. Nobody's going to say you have to put a guardrail there, but keep in mind that there is always the risk of injury, and if you are comfortable with that risk, if the beautiful view is worth that risk to you, then I say keep it just the way it is. This is gorgeous, but it's not safe. So just keep that in mind. It's like a sports car. You know, sports cars are gorgeous, but they're definitely not safe. So wiring. Inside this electrical panel, there is a wire, just one wire hanging out doing its thing. Is it connected to anything? No, it's not connected to anything. But even though it's not connected to anything, well, what does that mean for me? It means that anywhere else along that wire's length or at the end of the wire, it could be connected to something. And even though it's not connected to the power source inside that electrical panel, it could be connected to something else that has power outside of the electrical panel. And if that happens, then that wire becomes electrified. And so what I would say is that always put wire nuts on the end of your wires inside the electrical panel, because you never know whenever somebody could be like, oh, you know, it's not connected to anything, let's connect it to something. And then there you go. Then you have a problem. So we just want to be very, very careful whenever we are not terminating wires properly. Wires should always be terminated properly. So GFCI protection not installed. So GFCI, ground fault circuit interrupter. Here's the way it works. I'm your bartender. I give you a beer, you give me money. I give you beer, you give me money. We've completed a circuit. And now, as soon as you don't give me money, as soon as that circuit is broken, as soon as electricity is going somewhere else, I cut you off. There's no more. Cut you off. That's what a GFCI does. That's how it protects you. Now, there are also AFCIs, arc fault circuit interrupters. So again, same scenario. I'm the bartender. I give you beer, you give me money. I give you beer, you give me money. You seem too drunk. I don't like what you're doing. I'm not going to give you any more beer. Same thing. The electrical circuit, if something weird is happening, the electricity seems like it's jumping or arcing or just acting a little funny, then that AFCI is going to cut it off and say, no, we're done. No more electricity for you. And so this right here, GFCI protection, this is inside of a laundry room. So we are going, so technically any flat surface that there's electrical receptacle near should have GFCI, because if you can spill something and there could be an electrical component there, then that means you can be electrocuted. Electrocuted means you are dead, where shocked means you are injured by the electricity. So you can be electrocuted if there is no GFCI. So technically every receptacle should be GFCI in modern homes. They should also actually be AFCI. But what we are sticklers about are the kitchen, bathroom, laundry room, garage, those types of areas where water is expected. So moving on to the next, auto closure not latching. So there is a door between the house and the garage, and that door is designed to shut, or should be shut automatically. It should just be spring-loaded to shut. And the reason why is that the car can off-gas. Things inside the garage could catch on fire. And we need to make sure that whatever's in the garage is not coming into the living space. If I accidentally am running the car, I don't want to have all the carbon monoxide coming into the house. That's just one of those things. So next, leak from a valve. And so this valve here, this is a valve assembly, and basically an O-ring needs to be replaced. So if you are adamant that this is what you want to have, then you are going to take off this cover here. We'll turn off the water. Then you're going to remove the core, and then you can just replace a couple of these O-rings, and then that should, take care of that. Sometimes the O-rings will dry out if they're used very irregularly. They can wear out, or they could just be improperly seated whenever it was first installed, and the issue is now just presenting itself. So one of those things. All right, so the burners would not ignite. So what happens sometimes is that people clean the range right before they sell a house. And with that, there is the gas inlet. Then there's this plate that basically disperses the gas. And then there's this cap that then goes on top of that to make sure that it can only go out these ports. And then you have your electrical starter that is then using electricity to hit the metal that then causes a spark, which then will ignite the gas. The thing is that sometimes people don't put it, it has to be very precise. Sometimes people don't put it back together exactly the way that it's supposed to be put back together, and that could cause it to not ignite. Additionally, there could be a bad starter, there could be a clogged valve, there could be a million different things. So we're just letting you know, and then you can determine what you do after that. Now, a lot of times if they don't start, we'll remove a grate and we'll try to just, fiddle with it, because ideally we don't want to find issues in your house. That's not our goal. I mean, like, it is our goal, but we don't want to find more and more issues. If it's an easy, simple thing, I know I'm not there to repair stuff, but sometimes whenever I have a pool stopper for a drain, the first thing I do is I just give it a little tighten up on the back, especially if the pool stopper, whenever I lift it, just wants to fall right back down. That tells me that on the back of the sink, it just needs a little bit of a tighten up, because if I don't and I run that sink, it's guaranteed to leak. And so there are certain things that, even though we're not there to repair your house, that we will do to make sure that you aren't getting unnecessary defects with your house. So moving on to the next, vertical settlement cracking. Ugh. So this one isn't great. It's not terrible. Also, put into context the age of the house. If this cracking here was on a brand new house, well, then you don't know where it's going. You don't know how bad it's going to be. But if your house is 40 years old and this is all you have, you're doing pretty darn good. And it's nothing I'd be too worried about. And it's also interesting because whenever you look at a house, you can understand where the settling is coming from. And also the way this wall in this one goes is that you basically have this like poured footer, and then it comes up, poured footer, and then you have all of your blocks. And where these two footers are is where that crack occurred. And it's just because you have this super thick footer and this not so thick footer. And then in this area, that just creates, a weak point, if you want to think of it that way. Where a moment occurs and causes things to move, that is basically where that's going to occur. And is that like an engineering issue? Is there whatever? No, it's just that is an expected place where that would occur, and it's exactly where you would expect it to occur. If there was even a 1/4 inch or a 1/16 inch settling, that's where you'd expect to see the crack. And so really good find on this one, and it's nothing that I'm too worried about. So, but I'm not a structural engineer, so just make sure you talk to one of them too. All right. So standing water in the crawl space. This right here is bad. It's not good. We don't want to have water in the crawl space because that increases the humidity in that crawl space. The problem with increased humidity in a crawl space is that then we can have mold, we can have other issues like that, and it's just not ideal. The next question is, where did that water come from? Is it from groundwater seeping up and then getting on top of the plastic? Is it from some sort of a leak or something else like that? Wherever it comes from, it's not ideal. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these sloping floors. So these sloping floors right here, basically, that's not great. And whenever you have sloping floors, that can mean that we have some floor joists that are broken. That could mean that we could have had undersized floor joists. We could have had some appliances or other things put onto the floor that were just way too heavy for what it was. But in general, it's not ideal. And it can be a sign of an underlying issue that we may not want to have. So that's one thing. Then at this house, we also look at the wavy, sagging ceilings. And was that because we had water, we had moisture, we have ceiling joists that are failing? Was somebody walking up in an attic space? What happened here to cause this to happen? And again, this was in the same house. It's just one of those things that it's like, well, does that mean that we have some type of structural issue going on with the house? Why is it that it's wavy like this? And how can we fix it? All right, so then as we move down, there's heavy granule loss. So basically granules are like the sandpaper kind of rockiness that is on top of these shingles. And so whenever those granules are gone, then we have nothing protecting that shingle from the elements. And so those granules are very, very important. As we lose them, well, then that's not great. So same thing that we have whenever we talk about heating, that we have to make sure that like our baseboard heaters are not going to burn anything. Same thing occurs here. And this is actually one of the first times that I've seen this type of event here trying to catch the house on fire. So this right here, it could be either incomplete combustion, and this is just like a type of soot. But then that's a problem, because then that means that the fireplace or the furnace that it is connected to is not working the way that it's intended. But additionally, if it's not, then that just means it's producing way too much heat, and that is not ideal, or it has not been sealed correctly, and the hot combustion air is coming out before it goes through the vent. And if that's happening, that's also bad. So one of those things we just want to have a little look at. Now, additionally here, the water line leaking. So this particular refrigerator has just water dripping on the inside of it. That is bad. More than likely, you might want to replace that refrigerator, because if the line is leaking on the inside there, where else could it be leaking? What other issues do we have? That might just be, for peace of mind, a replacement of that particular refrigerator. All right, open ground on a receptacle. So open ground on a receptacle is not that uncommon. Basically, we have a hot and a neutral, and then we have our ground. So hot, neutral, ground. And with that, a lot of times there were two-prong outlets, and we still do two-prong outlets. Like if you plug in your cell phone to charge, if you have a hair straightener or a hair dryer, then it's going to be two prongs. But to make that safe, because there's not a ground, we need to have a GFCI, and a GFCI will be tracking how much electricity is going back and forth between the hot and neutral. And if some electricity goes where it shouldn't, well, then it's going to cut you off. Where I don't like what we have going on right here is that there was no sticker saying that it's GFCI protected. Additionally, it was a three-prong outlet, and that right there gives me a false sense of security that I can plug in an appliance that is designed to operate with a grounding plug. And if I'm plugging that in that's designed to operate with a grounding plug and the grounding plug's not there, I have a false sense of security. So first off, the appliance may not work the way it's intended. Secondly, if it's not GFCI protected, then it's dangerous. So let's take a look here. The next one, the handrail not present 4 or more risers. So anytime that there are 4 or more risers, again, put yourself in the mindset of a 90-year-old version of me, or you, or yourself, whatever, and you just want to make sure that you can be safe walking up and down these stairs. So we have a well recovery test that passed, and basically whenever we do a well recovery test, we have a whole video series about well recovery testing and what that all is. And basically this right here, well recovery test passed, means that we're getting 5.01 gallons per minute. And that is great. Anything above 3 is fantastic. And so this particular house is going to be operating just fine off of their well. We also did water test. This is not a water test for this particular house. But basically, once we go through all the categories, everything is good. Look at this one over here. This is a different water test. Everything is good. But it's important that there's a note that you have some corrosive and iron staining and whatever. And here are the steps that you're going to do to mitigate that. And then also down here, so basically corrosive has some scale forming, and then here are the recommendations for what this what the solution to this would be. And so it's just getting a water test is very important, because even though you may pass everything here that is required as far as the tests are concerned, the chemist that we use is phenomenal. Ed is great, and he then has just such an experience that he's able to say, oh, you know what? You might actually want to install this water softener. You might want to install this filter. Yes, you passed everything in your tests, but we still recommend that you do this. And he's really, really good at what he does. So then the next thing that we have is irregular noise from the garbage disposal. And this garbage disposal had a whole bunch of grease and a whole bunch of just grossness. It's time for a replacement. It's just that simple. Because once you start getting those weird noises, it's probably a bad bearing or something else along those lines. So ceiling condition. So again, this right here, beautiful exposed beams. But again, the problem with beautiful exposed wooden beams is that anytime that there's any kind of water, it stains it and it stays stained forever. So what we're going to do, we're going to trace out the stain. If the stain continues to push those mineral deposits past where our pencil line is, then we know that it is ongoing. Otherwise, it is not. And again, you can see with the thermal camera, you could see with the moisture meter that there was no moisture issue actively. But the question is, did they fix it? Because we didn't get anything in a disclosure that said that it was fixed. So what's going on there? And it's just one of those things that, again, inquire with seller. There's a reason that it says inquire with seller, and that is because they are the only ones that know whether or not they did something to fix it. But can you trust them? That's always the question, isn't it? So the previous moisture intrusion under construction, blah, blah, blah. So this particular house, they didn't exactly say what happened, but you can put the pieces together, and they had a massive leak. And I think that the house was put into a condition such as like, oh, we don't want to spend that much electricity. Why have the house at 65 degrees all winter long? That's silly. We are going to put the house down at 50 degrees because nobody's going to be there. 50 is warm enough that nothing will freeze except for the pipes inside the walls. The pipes inside the walls will definitely freeze. And in fact, they have frozen. And what you can see that they did a really good job of is they removed all the drywall in all these areas, like around the base, around wherever, because if the moisture can get out, then it'll dry out. And there's always this Goldilocks zone whenever it comes to mold. Too much water, it's not going to grow and create spores and whatever. Too little water, it's going to be dry and it's not going to grow and it's not going to create spores. But right in the middle is that Goldilocks zone for mold, and that's whenever your house is going to have some serious issues. So anyway, they did a really good job by cutting out all that drywall, allowing those cavities, the spaces between the studs to vent. But there's going to be a considerable amount of work to get this house back up to normal, and that's, you know, if you're pretty sure that there aren't any underlying mold related issues. And so anyway, it really pays to make sure that it really pays to make sure that you do your due diligence whenever it comes to keeping a house warm during the winter, because if you have any plumbing on exterior walls, that plumbing needs to have the heat of the house to not freeze. So that's probably what happened, but I don't know for sure because nobody disclosed this as an issue. So who even knows? Now, this water well right here, I don't know what the deal was, why this happened, but somebody cut through it and they cut the electrical wire, and then they ran a new electrical wire across the ground, and just terrible splicing, terrible everything, and the well did not work the way it was. You need a professional electrician to come out and do this properly. This was very haphazard, very bad, and the well is not ready for this next winter season. Let alone continued use even during the summer, because those electrical lines are going to be damaged. You take one lawnmower over top of the lawn and it's done, and you don't have water anymore. So just one of those things. All right, so why is it that the soffit on this is displaced? Why right here can I see underneath the soffit? And my question would be did that happen because we had snow and ice building up and then pushing that down and breaking it? And the answer is yeah, that's 99% likelihood of what happened. So just one of those things. Then here's an interesting thing that it's not interesting to us necessarily, but everybody thinks whenever there's water, then you will see blue, because they think on a thermal camera, blue is water. And all a thermal camera does is tell you the temperature of something, hot or cold. So we can see that there's this yellow, which is very hot, and then you see the blue, which is very cold. But in this particular picture, the yellow is actually the water. And why is that? Because it's hot water coming from the dishwasher. It's very hot water coming from the dishwasher. So what you're seeing here is a leak of hot water. And so it's just one of those things I wanted to point out, that just because you see something as hot or cold doesn't mean that it is water or not water. And then also, if it is just a solid color, that doesn't mean anything. That just means that maybe there has become an equilibrium between a soaking wet surface and the amount of humidity around it, so it's no longer evaporating in that area. And because it's no longer evaporating in that area, it is a solid color because we are not having a transfer of heat. So because of that, we take the moisture meter, we stick the moisture meter in, and we're good to go. That's why we always back up everything with a moisture meter if we have a concern. All right, now we're going to take a look at some radon here. So 8.5 picocuries per liter with a maximum of 13.1. Again, radon has the second highest, is the second highest cause of lung cancer, second only to smoking cigarettes. So smoking cigarettes, not good for you. Secondhand smoke, also not good for you. Radon, really not good for you. So just something to be mindful of. There's no time that you really want to have added radiation put into your lungs. Just think of it this way. Do I want to have irradiated lungs? No. So I don't want to be breathing in a whole bunch of radon. So what do? Put in a radon mitigation system. Simple as that. All right. Not present in each bedroom. So this is our smoke detectors. We even put in a little chart to say like, hey, here's where the smoke detector should be put in, and so on and so forth. And so basically, we just want to make sure, and so we take a picture of like an empty ceiling, and we just want to make sure people are putting in their smoke detectors. And again, we did a whole smoke detector series of wildfires, and then the last one was about smoke detectors, and you really want those photoelectric smoke detectors. That's what you want. That is ideal. Now, this one here, furnace past design life. This one was 27 years old. This was 27 years old. So the furnace is definitely longer than the 15 to 20 years, but 27 years old. So do I need to replace it, right? No, you don't need to replace it. You can wait till it breaks. However, right now we have a lot of supply chain issues, and getting replacement parts may not be an option. Whenever this breaks, you might have to buy a brand new furnace. But let me ask you the question. Buying a brand new furnace today versus buying a brand new furnace tomorrow, you're still spending the same amount of money. So buying a brand new furnace today versus 5 years from now, today versus a month from now, today versus a decade from now, you're still going to have to spend the money. So why not get as much life as you can out of that particular appliance? Now you can still be like, oh, person selling it, it's junk, blah, 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 give me some money. And if they do, good for you. But the reality is that right now, the reason why this is a concern is because there is a balance between life expectancy and risk of operating the equipment. And so if this is the only heat source in that house, then yeah, I might get it replaced. Because if this is the only heat source, we do not want our pipes freezing like we had in that other example. We want to make sure that that this house stays warm enough. So if this is the only heating source, like there's no gas fire or fireplace or anything like that, then yeah, I would definitely say let's get this thing replaced. But if you have a secondary heat source that you can supplement also with like an electrical, mobile electric heater kind of thing, then I would say, yeah, maybe it makes sense just to let this one run out until it dies. And maybe whenever it dies because of a simple, easy thing to fix, which isn't expensive. So anyway, just because it says end of life doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. So then we move on to sewer pipe. And so then this sewer pipe, there's a leak at that union. So inside of the crawl space, the sewer pipe is leaking and it is putting all of that waste, we'll just say, into the crawl space, which again, moisture inside the crawl space, not to mention the biological hazards of having, your waste going into your crawl space. It's just, not ideal. All right. So we need to put some screens on some of our exterior vents. Now, whenever we put screens on the exterior vents, it is important that you know what the vent is used for and you put the appropriate screen, because some of the byproducts of combustible gases can break down certain screen materials. Also, certain vents like laundry vents. We did a whole thing about laundry vents. You want to make sure that that laundry vent, that the lint is able to go away. And so instead of having like a screen, so if this right here is the hole, instead of having the screen right over top of the hole, you actually put a cage over top of the hole. And that cage gives enough space for all that lint to go where it's supposed to go without getting trapped. But it prevents insects, birds, and other kind of pests from going inside of there and making themselves a home. All right, so this particular house is doing a lot of things wrong. And basically these support beams are just terrible. So let's talk about a few things. There is over here, there is a main beam. So here is the main beam that supports all of these floor joists. So if the main beam is supported, we're good. But you can see that they are using just regular lumber, like trees. They're using logs, just some timber. That's not great. And so why are they doing that? Well, I don't know. Maybe they just need to add some extra support. Sure, great, whatever. But why are they using trees? I don't know. So then we come over here and we're taking a look at these floor joists, and then they put a 2x12 like this, and then they put a couple more little trees here. Why? Why do we have a couple little trees pushing here if right over here is where this is actually anchored and supported? So then we have this metal thing here, which isn't even anchored to this thing up here, which then has these 2x10s that are spanning between just these two joists, no other joists, and it's holding that up. Why? Why is that? Why are they doing that? And so, because it's wrong. I don't know if they were getting deflection in the floor, but that's the wrong place to be putting supports. I don't know if it was because they had an extra heavy thing. Like I could imagine if you were a machine shop, a professional welder, whatever, and you had a very, very heavy piece of equipment and you needed some extra support right there where the piece of equipment is. Sure, maybe. Okay, but that's still the wrong way to do it. Yeah, and then whenever you take a look at the floor, you can see that the floor has all these dips and bends and all this other kind of stuff. And that's because some areas are being supported in a way that they should not be, while others are not. And then that's what gets us this kind of wavy floor. And then all the floor tiles were cracked and broken. And the question is, what came first? The cracked and broken floor tiles or the attempted fix for whatever the reason was that they put that in there? And either way, it tells me that there is a structural issue that is not being addressed appropriately. So we definitely want somebody to take care of that. All right, on this one here, we just did a video about snow removal on your roof. And a lot of times there are companies that come out and they will do a whole bunch of snow removal on your roof. And whenever they do that snow removal on your roof, they don't care at all about your roof. And this particular roof, nobody cared about at all. Now, all these screw holes, why are there so many screw holes? Well, the reason why is because they would put a plate up there that they would then be able to attach their harnesses to. So whenever they're on the edge, they have a harness and they can just be chipping away at the ice. Well, then you look at the rest of the roof and they were chipping away at some ice and the roof is completely destroyed and whatnot. So anyway, it's just an expensive thing because you went with the least expensive option to get rid of your ice dams, to get rid of your snow. Make sure that you know that steaming the snow and ice off is the only way to do it. There's really no other way to do it. So just make sure that you are doing it appropriately. If you are doing any kind of chipping or anything, even if you don't chip all the way down through and hit the roof material, you are still chipping and creating a blunt trauma to that roofing material, and you are degrading its life. So make sure that you're only removing snow the appropriate way, removing snow you can do with like a shovel or like a roof rake, as long as it doesn't have a metal edge on it. But other than that, just make sure that if you're chipping off ice, don't be chipping off ice. Use salt or use steam, and that's the best way to do it. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything that we have for this November in-service training. We'll catch you on the next one. If you have any questions or if you'd like to schedule a home inspection, please visit 2moosehomeinspections.com. Have a wonderful day.